Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today about learning with Mboma Financial Services and for you to be able to learn more about your budget. So as we kick off our weekend learning sessions, and today we're starting it off with budgeting. As you know, the festive season is around the corner, and actually it's already here. So this is an opportunity for us to be able to learn how to better manage our finances in preparation for the festive season of 2023, and these learnings can also be adapted in terms of your monthly budget that you have to create so that you make sure that you use your money wisely. I'll be sharing my screen and my video will be off while I teach you and take you through this lesson. Enjoy. And please make sure that you ask those questions so that we can all learn together, because this is a journey that we take together. Thank you again for joining us. So, what is a personal monthly budget? So, ideally, a budget is for you to be able to plan. It helps you to plan for your finances and allocate your income according to the monthly expenses. And as you know, of course, life happens, and as much as we try to plan.
Sorry to disturb you, Nanjabulo. Can you please check if you're sharing your screen?
Yes, I am sharing. Can you guys see my screen now?
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Brad. All right. So a monthly budget. What is a personal monthly budget? The purpose of that monthly budget is ideally for you to be able to save and work towards saving on a monthly basis, right? And what normally happens is that, of course, you try to plan according to the expenses that you have, but life happens. And to try and actually circumvent situations where you are overspending, this is why we create a budget, ideally. And the purpose of that budget is for that very reason, which is being able to actually plan for these finances that you get, be it a salary or you own your own business. This information is transferable depending on whichever that is applicable to you, be it you own your own business or you are employed and you get a salary, be it monthly, weekly, or so forth. This kind of information is important for you to be able to plan adequately for these finances and make sure that you prepare yourself for the tough financial economy that we're currently in. So the first thing that I always advise clients to do is that when you're creating a budget, you need to have a plan, in a sense that you have to have a vision, write it down. You can't have a budget that is just floating in your head. You need to have it written down somewhere so that you know what you're referring to on a monthly basis, so that this way you are able to actually see what is happening in your finances. You can use a spreadsheet, you can use a piece of paper, but a spreadsheet is always it actually puts it in a much better format. It's something that you can always record every month. And what I normally say is that when you're creating a budget, you try and create a budget before you get paid, so that you are planning for the finances you have not received as yet. Then once you've gotten your salary, then you have to review that budget so that you make sure that you are utilizing your finances accordingly. So this is the first thing that you would have to do. What is your income? A lot of people tend to be dishonest when it comes to having or putting down their income, and they want to be a bit creative to say, actually, I earn more, because looking at their gross income. So normally individuals will want to put in their gross income instead of their net income, but that is not a true reflection of how much you earn, because the gross income is not the amount of money that you earn at the end of the day. The net salary is what gets credited in your account. So when you are making your provisions, you need to make provisions based on what you earn. Additional income is another thing that you need to populate when you are doing your monthly budget. Populate the additional income, be it you are making, maybe you've got a side hustle, you are an Uber driver, or you are selling clothes, you are selling wigs, you are doing something on the side to be able to get in additional money. This additional money has to be included in your budget, because you need to plan for that additional income so that you have a full view of what am I earning. And when you are making provision in terms of planning for your expenses, you are using the right amount based on what exactly you are earning. So another example of your additional income could be maybe maintenance. If you are receiving maintenance, be it I know sometimes people laugh at this comment when we say that if you are getting a girlfriend allowance or you are getting child maintenance, this is additional income that you are getting on top of your current salary. And this money needs to also be catered for when it comes to your budget, all right? Then, of course, comes the sticky part, having your expenses. And part of the creating of your budget is that you need to have your expenses populated. And what I normally say is that breaking down your expenses in terms of fixed and variable expenses allows you to be able to see how much you're spending when it comes to fixed expenses and how much you're spending when it comes to variable expenses. And the reason this is important, it's because let's say the fuel price reduces, right? We're all crossing fingers and toes for that day to actually come to light. But let's put this out there. If the fuel price reduces and you were utilizing maybe 1,500 rand for your fuel costs, and the price of fuel actually reduces, and then instead of spending 1,500 rand on a monthly basis, you start spending 1,000 rand. What do you do with that 500 rand? That is where variable expenses come from. The reason we want you to actually have variable and fixed expenses is because your fixed expenses are more or less expenses that don't change as often as your variable expenses. Your rent, your home loan, vehicle finance, any loans you could have, insurance, school fees, these are all expenses that normally stay the same throughout the year because you've either signed a contract. All these expenses are fixed because of a reason in terms of how long that contract is, or it's an obligation that you have no control over. And a variable expense, on the other hand, is more consumption-based. This means the more you use, the more you pay. So for example, a credit card. Credit card, you could have a credit card limit of 10,000 Rand, but with a credit card, you only pay for what you use. So if you use 400 Rand on the credit card, it then means you only pay interest on the 400 Rand. So you see, then your interest payment and repayment for that credit card is based on how much you've used. Your clothing account is another example. Your clothing account, they could give you a limit, for example, at an Identity store or a Markham's store, and you only get a limit to say that you've got a limit of 5,000 Rand. But if you haven't used the total 5,000 Rand of that clothing account, then you only pay for what you've used. So you would pay maybe 1,000 Rand. If you've only used 1,000 Rand, you only pay 500 Rand towards that clothing account based on the use. So variable expenses speak to expenses that are more flexible and they fluctuate because of your consumption and the uses. Another example of a variable expense, of course, groceries, and I mentioned fuel earlier, but groceries. If you are doing your shopping list in terms of consumption for the food, for food that you'll be eating in your family, normally a family of 4, research shows that you could be spending about 4,000 Rand a month just for food alone. So it depends. Black Friday is coming up. People are out on the hunt for specials, and they start looking for these specials. You go to Checkers, you go to Pick n Pay, you go to Spar, you go to Boxer, you go to ShopRite to be able to actually see what specials are available for you to be able to take advantage of. And a nice example is that when you do your grocery shopping, you always get to save a little bit of money because you might not utilize all the finances that you've allocated for that particular budget, right? And that then comes into, if you don't utilize the full budget that you've allocated for the groceries or your petrol or your credit card or your clothing account, then you've got a little bit of money left over. So flexibility comes in on that variable expense because you have a bit more control as to how you're going to use that money. Say you think to yourself, actually, I'm going to go start utilizing public transport instead of driving to work because I now go to the office maybe twice a week. Then I can save on fuel. Instead of actually paying for fuel, I can now use maybe public transportation. That way I'm reducing my cost when it comes to fuel prices, and the money that I'm saving from my budget on the fuel cost, that money.
Again, see what you did there. Very good. Okay, so I'll meet you downstairs, music room.
Yes, a totally normal room to have in a house.
It's just downstairs. It's your second door on the right.
And can we all be on mute when we join the call? Then we can have a question and answer session so that everybody can be able to just have the same learning experience. Thank you very much. So on the variable expenses, we look at the variable expenses and think to yourself, okay, with the variable expenses, these fluctuate. I have a bit more control in terms of how much money I spend. If the fuel price goes up, of course, your variable expenses will increase. If the fuel price goes down, your variable expense in terms of the fuel cost or transportation, it then reduces. So it gives you a bit more leeway in terms of being able to try and reduce the amount of money you spend on a monthly basis when it comes to the variable expenses. And this is where we look, what I would say to you, this is where you'd want to look at in terms of trying to reduce your expenses. If you want to start saving and you say, no, Jabulo, I don't know where am I going to get money to save, but I want to save. Variable expenses are the best place for you to try and actually see what can I reduce so that I can be able to actually save more and start the saving habit. Variable expenses are the best place to start because you have a bit more control over these expenses in comparison to fixed expenses. Okay, then I will always advocate for having a savings portion allocated when you're creating a budget, because be it you have a financial goal to reduce your debt, you have a financial goal to maybe you want to go on a family trip, there's something you want to maybe buy a house, you want to buy a vehicle, you want to save up to start your own business. Having a financial goal part of your saving, your budget is a great indication and a constant reminder as to what you are working towards. Look at it this way. If you win the lotto today, right? And I'm sure a lot of you have seen the show I Blew It. That is why we have shows like I Blew It, unfortunately, because people don't actually have a plan for the finances that they encounter. And yes, the lotto normally actually gives people an opportunity to speak with financial advisors and financial planners to try and help people learn how to manage these large sums of money that they've just come to get instantly. But you know what? People normally say, no, thank you. I don't need those. I don't need people telling me how to use my money. And then unfortunately, a few years later, we see them on I Blew It, right? So we don't want to have those kind of situations, even when you get your bonus, right? Christmas is coming. So what are organizations going to be doing? They're going to be giving performance bonuses and stokvels. If you win a stokvel, you know what happens in Christmas. Maybe it's your turn to receive the money and you're going to be getting a nice lump sum from your stokvel or your committee that you are part of. And you need to have a plan. What am I going to do this money? Because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you've blown the money and utilized the money and not had a plan in place for it. So putting a financial goal part of your budget is very important, because you constantly look at your budget on a monthly basis, and it's a constant reminder as to what am I planning my money for? What am I working towards? Because if you wake up in the morning, for example, and you don't have a purpose, you don't know what you're going to be doing for the rest of your day, you're going to be demotivated. There's nothing driving you to say, okay, this is the reason I'm waking up. So when you add a financial goal on your budget, you kind of giving your money a purpose aside from the expenses that you need to pay, which of course, in order for you to live, you will encounter expenses, but you are actually doing more when it comes to your money by having a plan to say, actually, this is what I would want to achieve. In the next 3 years, I want to buy myself a home. In the next 3 years, I want to buy myself a vehicle. I want to start my own business. Having a financial goal is how you start working towards that plan. And the reason you include a financial goal on your budget is for you to be able to see. And the reason we put it at the end is for that you can be able to see how much do I have left over first, because you don't want a situation where you start saving and yet you've not done a budget to understand how much can I afford to save. And the word afford to save is very important, because I may want to save 10,000 Rand a month, but can I afford to save 10,000 Rand? The only way you can determine whether you can afford to save that 10,000 Rand a month or whichever percentage is based on your budget. Your budget will give you an indication as to these are my expenses, this is my income, this is my additional income, this is what I've got left over at the end of the month, be it a deficit, be it a surplus. If I've got money on a positive and I've got money left behind, it's a surplus. If I don't have any money left and I'm sitting at a negative balance, then that's a deficit. Then you start working towards, how do I get myself to a positive balance? We go revisit the variable expenses and say, hey, which of these expenses can I reduce? Do I really need to have an account at Edgar's, an account at Identity, an account at Malcolm's? Why do I need to have so many clothing accounts? Do I really need to have a credit card, an overdraft, a loan? Why do I need to have so much debt from the bank? Why can't I consolidate my debt? So that is why when you break down your budget into fixed and variable expenses, it gives you that indication as to where can I start reducing and making better choices when it comes to my lifestyle. And going to your variable expenses is always the best place to start, because those are the kind of expenses you have control over. There's no way you can walk up to your landlord or go to the bank and say, hey, I can't afford to pay your bond, reduce my bond. Well, unfortunately not. We would all love that. But realistically speaking, the best place would be the variable expenses. And because you have control over those variable expenses, you make the ultimate decision. You make the ultimate decision to say, hey, I'm not going out every weekend with friends. I'm going to reduce my entertainment. I'm going to reduce my alcohol consumption, right? Festive season has already started, and you can see with the vibe, the mood, people are already in the December mood. And what happens during the festive season, you get these pop-up invitations. Hey, let's have drinks, let's do this, let's do that. But now you're learning to budget. And if it's not part of your budget, you say, okay, I can't join you this month, but if you give me an invite for next month, I will add it to my budget, and then I can allocate funds for it. So that is what budgeting is about. You are planning in terms of, how am I going to use my money? You're no longer making instantaneous decisions and being impulsive by the way you spend your money, but you take a step back and say, wait a minute, let me think about this. Let me check my budget first, and let me see if I've got funds available for this particular expense. If I haven't budgeted for this expense, then, and it's not a necessary expense, then I can think to myself, no, I don't need this. And this is why next week we were going to be learning about the difference between needs and wants, because this is what comes into the importance of budgeting when we go into our next lesson next week, learning about the needs and wants. Because once you have an understanding of creating a budget, you need to understand what are the different needs and wants, so that you can make sure that when you have done your budget, you are able to assess, is my budget full of needs? Is my budget dominated by wants? Am I going out more, spending money recklessly? Those are the kind of things you are able to see when you do a budget properly. And these are the kind of things you'll be able to see next week when we now delve into learning about needs and wants. So I just created another little example for us to just look at this practically, and then we can go to the question and answer session. If you have questions about your personal challenges when it comes to budgeting, and then we can just open the floor for a discussion in terms of your personal experience as to what happens when you budget on a monthly basis. So here's Tammy, and she's an engineer. She earns about 45,000 Rand a month. Wow, lucky you, Tammy. And she does her budget before her payday. This is the nice thing I like about Tammy. She's planning before she gets her salary, right? Because what is the point of planning when you've already received the salary? You plan before you get the salary so that you can adequately address all the expenses that you need to pay for that particular month. And this way, you can then politely decline any pop-up invitations that were never planned for according to your budget. So look at Tammy's financial goal. So she is saving she's saving more, and she wants to save more and reduce some of her expenses. I like this plan, Tammy. So here's a breakdown, right? We've got her income, right? She has no additional income. Okay. Then she's got her home loan. She's got a BMW finance. Tammy, you're living such an expensive lifestyle. Insurances, right? So this insurance line item actually incorporates quite a lot, possibly her life cover, funeral cover, vehicle insurance, hence why it's possibly like 4,000 Rand. Then, of course, school fees. And yes, like I mentioned, she has no control over the school fees. I mean, you get a letter at the beginning of each year, or maybe at the end of the current year, to tell you that the fees of the next year are going to be X amount for the rest of the year. So this is why it's more of a fixed expense, because she's probably going to be paying 5,000 Rand for the entire 12 months. Her insurance, she only updates her insurance once a year at the beginning of the year, or when her policies are due for review, and that's done once a year. That's why it's under fixed expense. She has no control over that expense. Same goes with the vehicle finance. She has no control over changing that vehicle finance unless she's going to start, maybe she wins the lotto and she pays a lump sum towards that particular expense. The home loan is the same thing. You sign a contract for about 20 years, and currently I know it goes up to 30 years. So you can sign a contract, and in that contract, there's a rate linked to that home loan. So that rate, you don't have control over that rate. That's based on what the Reserve Bank says. So we've had our repo rate increase 3 times already this year. We're sitting at 11.75% interest rates, right? So unfortunately, she was not going to be able to change this home loan unless she wins the lotto and then pays off the home loan. So it gives a bit of an understanding as to why we would put certain items under fixed expenses, because the less control you have over reducing the amount that you pay towards that expense, then it is more of a fixed expense because it doesn't change often. Water and electricity, that goes perfectly under variable expenses because it's based on consumption. We've seen all over the news how we are experiencing water shedding now in South Africa, and with load shedding also. So trying to find ways to be able to reduce your electricity bill, your water bill is very important. And if you put in some of these measures, you can try and reduce your monthly consumption. So that is why it's important then when you break down these expenses, and when Tammy wants to reduce and as her financial goal, possibly reduce her expenses, this is where she needs to look at. She needs to look at, how can I reduce the water and electricity bill? I mean, paying 3,000 Rand a month on just water and electricity is a bit excessive. What can we do as a family, right? What can we do? What can I do? Because this is a family expense, right? This is a discussion you have with your family and say, guys, what can we do to try and reduce our water consumption? What can we do to try and reduce our electricity consumption? Should we start cooking on the weekend and have planned meals so that we can reduce electricity consumption? Should we get a gas stove to try and reduce electricity consumption? People should start maybe taking shorter showers and maybe less utilization of the bathtub, so that we can reduce and minimize the expense of our water bill, right? Credit card. This is an I situation, because this is Tammy. All Tammy. She made this expense. She has control. She has complete control over this expense, because this is a decision she can make to say, okay, why do I need to have a credit card? What am I using this credit card for? I know a lot of people are enticed by the rewards and the rewards. I think it's eBucks. Absa has rewards. FNB has eBucks. I'm not sure. I think Standard Bank also has a reward system. So all of these banks offer you reward system, and normally they would tell you that if you get a credit card, you get better rewards, you get more rewards, and you get more benefits. But the question is, at what cost? Right? At what cost? Because what is the interest rate that you are paying on that credit card, and what is the interest on a monthly basis for that 2,000 Rand that she has to pay towards the credit card every month? Is it worth the rewards she's getting? That's an assessment and a question that you should ask yourself if you have a credit card. Am I really getting the value for money? I know that people sometimes say, no, Nanjabulo, I actually transfer all my salary into my credit card and I utilize my credit card so that I can get the benefits of those rewards. And to those people, I say, awesome, because you are not using the bank's money, right? You're using your money. It's just that you're using it from the credit card. That is you being smart and utilizing and actually outsmarting the system, because ideally the credit card is a trap. It's something that they use to entice people to say, hey, create a credit card and it's going to allow you to get all these amazing rewards. And once you get the credit card, you get a notification to say you qualify to increase this credit card. You qualify to increase this credit card. A credit card that started at 2,000 Rand is now sitting at 15,000 Rand, just because you kept getting these emails and messages or calls saying that you can quickly increase the credit card. And of course, if you are desperate for money at that point in time, you are definitely going to take that increase. But in a situation where you don't have that credit card, then you're not going to be enticed to actually accumulate additional debt unnecessarily. So clothing accounts, that's another Tammy issue. If this is a clothing account she utilizes, for example, let's say Woolies. She has a Woolies account because she said, oh, my kids like Woolies. They have better quality. I also I'm able to do so much more in terms of buying items at Woolies. I can buy my clothing. Sometimes I can get a few groceries. Having a Woolies account is actually beneficial for me and my family. But is it worthwhile to actually have to pay 1,500 Rand a month on a Woolies account? Why can't you purchase clothing at least maybe twice or three times a year? Every season, when the season changes, we all know there's specials. There's crazy sales when the seasons change. So why can't you allocate funds and save towards that particular season special or season sale? That way you get those items at a discount, and then you do not necessarily have to have a clothing account. Their clothing accounts, they work the same way as a credit card. It's a nice to have, but the minute you have the account, it's an easy trap to fall into, and then you're just stuck in this wormhole of getting more and more debt, because every time you pass by the store, you see something nice and you're like, oh, this looks so beautiful. I think I'm going to like this. Oh, I had a bad day. I need to just give myself an uplift. Trust me, if you've had a bad day and you wanted to uplift yourself and you had to pay cash, there is no way you would be thinking about buying a 2,000 Rand dress if you were paying for it cash. But when you have a clothing account, you don't feel the money leaving your pocket because it's what? It's debited into that account, right? And you know that you're going to be paying it in installments. But can you imagine the fact that you are paying towards an item or an item of clothing you don't even own anymore because you've probably, maybe this item got destroyed a month before, months later, or years later, but you're still paying for it because the interest that they include in these clothing accounts and these credit cards, it's a trap. And we always fall for these traps because they sell convenience, the convenience of having access to money that you currently don't have. And that's where the problem starts. Why do you want to purchase items when you do not have the funds to afford to pay for those items in cash? So this is another example of stay away. It's a big no-no. Having a clothing account, having a credit card, big no-nos, right? Food, unfortunately, you can't start eating sand and water, right? I know it sounds like a good idea, but unfortunately, you will not survive. But food is another item that you would have to actually try and see how you maneuver and look for those specials, right? To try and minimize your grocery list. But if you be a savvy shopper, right? I know people like using that term, be a savvy shopper, be a smart shopper. But ideally, what that means is that you would need to be able to look out for these specials and deals in certain places. Black Friday is coming up. Okay, you need to start looking at these grocery stores and looking out at what do I need. Okay, I've got a shopping list. I'm looking for specials. Where can I find milk? If I want to buy long life milk, you know that long life milk lasts longer. Can I not find this long life milk at a special at whichever grocery store? That's what you should start planning. That's what planning is about. That's what a budget is about. You are planning for the spending. You don't just wake up and say, I'm going to buy this today. You plan towards that spending, right? And not a lot of people can save, right? And that's why it's important when you are creating your budget, you give yourself a view of how much can I afford, right? In this instance, Tammy can afford to save 3,000 Rand, and that's not the norm for a lot of people. Not a lot of people can save 3,000 Rand a month, or yet alone save just 1,000 Rand or 500 Rand. But when you go to your budget, you create your budget, you put down your expenses, you are honest about how much you spend when it comes to variable expenses. If you are a person who's going out a lot, put an item that speaks to entertainment and be honest with yourself, because sometimes you're not able to make a change because you can't see the problem. But when you make the budget, you are able to identify and see the problem to say, hey, I'm actually overspending when it comes to entertainment. I'm actually overspending when it comes to groceries. Why am I spending 3,000 Rand groceries when there's just two of us living in this household? Those are burning questions that only you can address when you are honest with yourself. So this is a nice reality check when you create a budget and you're sticking to the budget, because it's a constant reminder of this is how much I earn, this is what I spend, this is what I have left over. And from what I've got left over, this is how much I can save. And you can only make the assessment of how much you can save once you've created a budget. Because like I mentioned earlier, you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you put money aside today, 3 weeks later, you run into a situation, you need money, you don't have money in the bank. Now you go, actually, let me go to my savings account, right? We all know that. You go to the savings account and let me transfer. No, this month I'm not saving. I've got this problem and that problem, right? We try to make sure that whatever you commit to putting aside, you make sure that you stick to that commitment. And the only way to be able to stick to that commitment is what we're going to be learning 2 weeks from now when we talk about saving and how to create a good savings plan, right? So we are now at the end of the session, and I will be taking questions. Bradley, you still with us? I will stop sharing my screen and then go back live so that I have my video so that I can address any questions that people might have.
Hi, Nanjabulo.
Yes, Bradley.
Great listen. I have a question. How do you stay committed to your budget if the prices of like basic goods, things that you usually buy, keep increasing? Because, for example, I know milk was 100 rand not too long ago, but now when we went to Checkers, it was like 120. So, how do you commit to the budget you have set, or does the budget also vary depending on the prices of things?
I like that. And that's 100% correct. The reason we break down the budget into fixed variable expenses, it's because when you have a situation where your the price of milk, right? There was a situation where we got the price of oil increased last year, especially after the Russia-Ukraine war conflict, whichever term you want to refer to it as. And the oil prices, in terms of just cooking oil, skyrocketed. And at a point in time where you were spending about 200 Rand, almost 200 Rand on just 2 liters of cooking oil. And what normally happens? Are you going to stop using cooking oil? No. You still need to use cooking oil, but now you need to look at your budget and say, actually, I don't have additional money, but what can I do to try and make up for this 200 Rand now that I need to allocate? You look at your other expenses and say to yourself, maybe this month I'm not going to go out. This month I'm not going to entertain any invitations from friends. I'll tell my friends, guys, no, I'm a bit busy. I'm cutting back on I'm going out. If you are a consumer of alcohol, you cut back and say, actually, I now need to find a place to, where am I going to get this 200 Rand for me to be able to pay for the fuel, for the cost of oil? Because it's not as if your employer is going to say, oh, Bradley, oh, we realize that the cost of living is so high. Here's an increase because you need to cope with the high cost of living. No, it's not. You need to go into your budget and look at your budget and see on your variable expenses, where can I make the change so that I can start reducing my expenses? In this way, I can try and actually adjust myself so that I can cope financially with a tough economy. So 100%, you need to make that adjustment, and it all comes to you. And that's why it's important to be able to break down your budget into variable fixed expenses so that you have a full view as to what can I change, what needs to change, what needs to go and not be part of my budget. Because we do have a lot of habits that we have as individuals that are not necessary, that needs to be changed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was very informative. I guess my McDonald's portion of the budget has to come to an end.
100%. Do you see? Is McDonald's something that you really need? I mean, that's what we're going to be learning about next week when we learn about the needs and wants, because you need to then identify what exactly is a need, what is a want. And once you have a clear understanding of your needs and wants, then it helps you to identify all the changes that you can make on your budget to try and work towards creating a budget that works for you and have the ability to reach a financial goal that you've put in place. Any questions? Any additional questions? I see we've got a few joiners on the call. What do you guys normally do with your personal budget? Do you budget? That's another question. Having a budget. I mean, it sounds like such a simple thing, but a lot of people don't actually budget. And that's where the problem first starts. Not being able to actually create a budget. And this recording will be shared on our YouTube channel so that you can be able to review and rewatch the lesson. And then, of course, when we do a recap next week, we can also still just take up questions and answers in terms of just learning together and giving people an opportunity to ask and raise their questions regarding budgeting, because it ties in very well with the next lesson that we'll be doing next week, which is learning about your needs and wants and identifying and understanding the difference between needs and wants, and how those needs and wants and the distinction between the two, how it ties in back into your budget. If there's no more questions, I would like to then draw our lesson to a close and just thank everybody for taking the time to join us, and just follow us on our socials and connect with us, be it on Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, and you can also like our page and our website on Google reviews, and just give us and share your thoughts in terms of what you liked about our lesson today and what you would want to learn in future. And we'll also be sharing the link to the WhatsApp group, so that if you'd want to join our WhatsApp group and our conversations that we're having about money, then you can also join our Money Matters WhatsApp group. And this is another opportunity for you to be able to learn more about money and how you can actually start talking about money, because yes, it's a very interesting topic, but it's not an easy topic to start talking about. And it's important for you to start getting comfortable talking about money so that you can start making the right decisions. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of the evening, everyone. Bye.